and just got done from working. Got off of a 8-hour shift. Let things kind of marinate after having what was arguably a very bittersweet morning. Sweet because I got to work pretty early. There was barely any traffic that I had to really go through. And I made some pretty bomb-ass oatmeal that was eating on the way. Granted, probably not the safest thing to do while you're driving, but like I said, came out really nice. Nutmeg, cinnamon. It was actually a very delectable breakfast, and I was rather in a good mood, only to then get to work, check my notifications on my social media platforms, and I get bombarded with a 1-2 punch of Gene Hackman, the legendary 2-time Oscar-winning actor, passing away at the age of 95 in some very weird circumstances that are currently being investigated. But then secondly, I come across an article that it's been made official via Mattel through a public statement that they have acquired the license to DC action figures for at least the second half of 2026. And when I saw this graph, it was presented by Paternia. It was then shared by a bunch of people on the McFarlane Toys Facebook group, as well as the Reddit, etc. And there was a little bit of panic mongering. You know, there were some people saying, well, what about McFarlane? What about McFarlane? And I took the steady approach and said, let's wait. I gave the whole day a little bit. And to be honest, I'm still giving it some time, because we have yet, at the time of this recording, yet to get an official statement from McFarlane Toys, from Todd himself, from any kind of representative. I'm trying to see if maybe I can reach out to someone to maybe express some kind of comment, some kind of deliberation of what they can and cannot say, etc. But I don't know. I don't know what's going to exactly yield from that. I don't know if anyone's willing to really talk to me in some capacity to maybe provide some kind of information on the YouTube channel. But right now, all I know is exactly what you guys know, which is that via Mattel's official statement, and I'm paraphrasing here, I'm not going to say word for word, especially since I'm using my phone to record right now, so I can't really reference it to it, but from what I remember reading it and rereading it, it was also, of course, an awful lot of the corporate speak, but basically a deal was struck between Warner Brothers Discovery and Mattel to generate DC licensed figures based on Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Justice League overall, the Joker, etc., for the second half of 2026. So you're going to actually start seeing figures from them, from Mattel, for these properties in the second half of 2026. So anytime after July 2026. So where does that leave McFarlane? Again, no official confirmation or statement, but certain words that from that statement that Mattel put out is really what stands out to me. Them calling them a global deal. You know, a really strong emphasis on the word global. I'm thinking about that word global and thinking, okay, does that mean that your presence for DC related figures is going to be found in other countries? Or does this mean that you get to own not just one particular scale, like you're going for just a 6-inch scale? And that's ultimately the question that's on everybody's heads prior to getting a formal statement from McFarlane. Is this similar to what they got going on with Spin Master, where Spin Master does the 4-inch little, you know, younger kids, younger demographic, slightly less articulated, less detailed, but still more accessible and affordable stuff, and then McFarlane does the more collectible stuff, and they can kind of share the license a little bit? Or is Mattel just completely taking it over in a global scale? Is that really what global means? And so the fact that McFarlane's been quiet, I gotta be honest, there's a little part of me that feels like this is probably it. And on the brightest of sides, July 2026, this gives them a whole whopping year and a half to just bust themselves. You know, McFarlane Toys bust themselves as far as what they really want to create. It's at least not effective immediately. They can at least get themselves a year to get a bunch of figures that have been on the wish list coming down the pipeline. Like I mentioned before, a proper Batfleck from Justice League, and then a handful of other, you know, related characters and figures. A Jim Gordon for the Dark Knight trilogy. That's just to name a few, only because some of those properties have been tackled recently. But I'm pretty certain that there's other. Please, McFarlane, before this happens and you go out and style an absolute Batman of the new comic, and even an absolute Superman, an absolute Wonder Woman. So please start pulling together suggestions and ideas for what you can really create if this truly is going to be the end of an era for the DC Multiverse 7-inch line from McFarlane. Because, like, some people have actually been mentioning in the groups, like, say what you want, and trust me, there's been some bumps and bruises that McFarlane has braced, but the 7-inch scale and what allowed them to do for scaling and detailing as far as, you know, getting certain things that you could look at, like, for example, somebody posted a post saying, look at that Power Girl that just came out. Do you honestly think Mattel is going to be able to do that? No. And I'm not saying this. Like I said, somebody posted it on Reddit, I believe. I'll try to post it here in post. But somebody made a post on Reddit with a really good point about how that kind of detail, and trust me, the very attention to sculpting and detail for that Power Girl, we're not really going to see Mattel be tackling some of that. And trust me, Mattel, I remember those movie masters from the Dark Knight movie wave, and they had their own sense of novelty. But if that's the articulation we're dealing with, we might be missing McFarlane sooner rather than later. And this also leads us to wonder exactly what it would have been like if some other companies like Jakks Pacific, specifically Jada, would have been like if they had gotten the DC license instead. But to see it go back to Mattel, and that, again, that's another word that they keep using. It's going back to Mattel. Back. It's like they're taking it back from somewhere or somebody. Again, it's this wordage that I'm kind of locking my eyes at and going, what does this mean? So I'll try to keep you guys updated if maybe I can get some kind of information relayed to me, and maybe I can provide something on the channel. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll probably most definitely be making a follow-up video in a much more formal fashion once McFarlane puts out a statement, once we get some more details maybe pulled from Mattel apart from that official statement, and letting the days kind of hopefully go and give us some information as we, again, like I mentioned before, let it marinate and see where things go. But for now, yeah, personally, I do think that this is a bit of a bummer. And I feel like what makes it hurt most is because it's not so much that McFarlane's losing the license. We talked about this earlier in the year where some of these licenses were expiring and they were getting swapped, along with even some of the Marvel stuff with Hasbro, which I don't think is going anywhere, if I can comment on that. I personally feel like that's already been inked. But with DC, it looks like this is the major big swap going into the new year. And to me, like I said, the biggest detriment is not so much that that's leaving McFarlane, but that it's going to Mattel. With so much other opportunities to give it to a company that I would have loved to have gotten the license and see what they could do. Having it go back to a very safe option like Mattel, it's kind of a wasted opportunity personally. But what do you guys think? Let me know down below. And I'm going to go ahead and start hitting this hour-and-a-half long traffic to get home because I am getting hungry. Until then, stay humble. Peace.